Cool. Amelia, welcome to the potty.
Cheers, thanks for having me, Noah.
No, awesome to have you on. Obviously, you are a cricket superstar in New Zealand. I think I remember hearing your name spoken on like News Talk ZB when I was probably in year 13. They were like, Amelia Kerr, playing for Wellington, age of 14, and since then you've got a pretty impressive resume. I know as Kiwis, we don't really like talking about our achievements and stuff so much, but before we sort of go into your cricket career, do you mind just introducing yourself? Who is Amelia Kerr?
Yeah, kia ora, my name's Amelia Kerr. Most people call me Mealy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I grew up in Tawa here in Wellington, very close with my family, and that's been the most important thing to me growing up, and they've probably taught me everything I know. I mean, you learn a lot of lessons throughout sport, and I think with cricket it's a pretty fickle game and it's up and down, which can be a reflection on life, and there's a lot of great lessons, but I'd say I learnt them from a pretty young age through my family, and I've been very fortunate to grow up in a close-knit family with a big extended whānau, and loved sport growing up. Family was sport and music, and played heaps of sports growing up, and then cricket was kind of the one that I chose and absolutely loved it. Had a great support network around me, and fortunately played for Wellington at a young age and then New Zealand at a young age, and I just feel very lucky that I get to do the job I love and live out my childhood dream.
It's super cool, man. And with cricket, I feel like all New Zealanders, all Kiwis have like exposure to cricket through backyard, games with your family and stuff like that. I'm curious to know, how did you find cricket as an avenue for you, and what was the moment where it really stuck and you're like, holy crap, I'm actually kind of good at this thing?
Yeah, so I started playing cricket when I was about 6 years old, and would have some pretty good backyard battles. My uncle used to have this house and he mowed a pitch on his back lawn.
There you go, it's the backyard cricket.
Yeah, and we had this Christmas Eve battle, kids versus adults. There was an honours board on the shed. You just paint it up if you whatever, and it was always competitive but good fun, and I played with boys growing up, and I loved it, and that was kind of what it was for me, but it also had the family feel. My best mates, I played with my cousins, so I just loved it. But I remember vividly when I was about 9 years old, I was watching the White Ferns play on TV in a World Cup final, and they lost to Australia on the last ball. Sophie Devine hit it into Elise Perry's foot, and if it hadn't have hit her foot, it would have gone for 4 and they would have won. And I remember that moment, and I wanted to cry after the game. It was like I was so invested in this team, and I watched that and I just said to Dad, I want to be a White Fern one day.
Wow.
And then since that moment, I think one thing that was, I don't know why, and I think my parents, both of them, are very hardworking, but I've always had this thought that if you want to get anywhere in life, you've got to work hard. So after I watched that game, I said to Dad, we're going to the nets every morning before school. So I was doing that from about 9, 10 years old, because I thought if I want to represent my country, I've got to work harder than anyone. And that was my mindset from a very young age. And that's kind of how it started. And it's the whole, you can't be what you can't see. So it's awesome now that women's sport's on TV.
Yeah. And for you, going exactly to that point, because there's no other Amelia Kerr prior to you, right? And the visibility of women's sport in New Zealand, it's slowly getting a lot better. There's a lot more exposure now, but even thinking like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you barely, there was no Super Rugby for women as well. And to stumble across women's sport at all, apart from netball, was so rare on any sports screens or even social media for clips and stuff like that. So what was that moment like for you, thinking, hey, I want to really give this a go as a career, even though you might not have had that visibility to see other women sort of living that pathway?
Yeah, it was, I guess at that young age, I didn't really know what the career path was like for cricketers, but I knew you could represent your country, and for me, I didn't care if it meant that it wasn't going to be my job. And I guess fortunately, by the time I made the White Ferns, it slowly started becoming semi-professional, and I was still at school, so it's not like I needed a job. I was living at home with mum and dad. But yeah, to see where it is now, when I made the White Ferns, my debut game, it was on a live stream thing. And now every game we play is on TV. So the growth there, it started off in New Zealand having, I think, 4 contracted players, and now we've got 17 contracted White Ferns that are pretty much full-time athletes. So I think at a young age you're so naive and you just want to represent your country, and then because I made it so young and I was at school, I didn't need to think of work or a career option, and I saw how the game was growing around the world, and I hope that it'll get there to New Zealand.
Yeah.
But it's the people before me that have kind of, paved the way and played for New Zealand, having other jobs or not working to represent their country, have kind of allowed us to do what we do today.
Because you've been throughout the ranks, been so talented and are so talented from such a young age. How have you dealt with the pressure that you put on yourself and the pressure that other people also put on yourself to, 1, I think, be consistent, 2, to perform, and 3, with all of the spotlight and attention on you, to also stay true to who you are? How have you found all of that?
Yeah, I love competing. I'm very competitive. So I think for me, when I go out on the field, I'm just in the battle and I want to compete and I want to do the best I can for the team. And I think the older I've gotten, the more I understand that, some things are out of your control and you can't perform every game.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. I think for me, with cricket, it's about being really level. So I never read the highs and lows too much because, one, at the end of the day, it's just a bat and a ball, and I'm doing what I love. So it wasn't for me, as dark as it sounds, it's not life or death, and I'm doing what I love. But there's definitely challenges along the way, and because I'm so competitive also with myself, I want to be the best, I want to do this and whatever, that, sometimes I see failure when it's actually an all right day, but I've kind of always had the mindset that from those times where I don't go as well, I'm learning from that experience, and because of that, it's going to help me in the future. So I think my mindset with cricket has been, and the mental side of the game has helped me, be where I am now and perform at a young age. And that was kind of fed through my family and being able to stay true to myself. It was a massive thing, was just life balance.
Yeah.
And I think, I'd go on tour with the White Ferns and then I'd come back to school and hang out with my mates like a normal teenager. That most of them didn't really know anything about cricket, and I think that was so refreshing.
Yeah, true.
And then my family, it was always be a good person first, and that was kind of the message. We don't care what you do, like, yes, we're proud of you, but we don't care what you do as long as you're a good person and you treat others well. So I think that's kind of been embedded in me from a young age, and that probably helped. I guess when you're living a life that's probably a little bit different to what you think when you're 16 years old.
Yeah, totally. That's super cool. How have you juggled with the pressure throughout all of this? Because you've been really vocal with your own mental health journey along the way, and it's been super cool and refreshing to see just somebody with such a massive profile in New Zealand, again, talking really openly about, times where you are feeling quite shit. You're feeling, you're not feeling 100% and being vulnerable into that situation. If we can kind of rewind, where did your journey start with mental health and, battling depression? When did that moment sort of start from you? And how have you taken it to where you are today?
Yeah, well, when I look back now and I think that when I was about 9-10 years old, I probably had really bad anxiety.
But you didn't know at the time.
I didn't know, and I talk to my parents about it now, about some of the thoughts I had, and they probably weren't normal for a kid that age.
What were they, if you don't mind me asking?
One was, I'm sure actually they're thoughts that people have, but I had this massive fear of losing my parents at a young age, and I had a massive fear of, like, I couldn't really sleep as a child. I didn't sleep.
Parents' worst nightmare,
yeah. I just could not sleep with like almost like seeing things as like hallucinations.
True.
And all of this stuff. I think there was around like stranger danger at school, and it just got in my head about being kidnapped, but also wanting, like, I didn't want to ruin my parents' lives and
That's really
things.
deep, and like I was not thinking about that at the age of 9 or 10.
Yeah, no, I think all I was thinking was I just want to be this. I just didn't want to cause any trouble for my family, and I didn't want to ruin their lives. And then there was almost a separation anxiety, which I spoke to someone about, like probably last year, because when I was 2-3 years old, my mum had breast cancer, and I went into hospital every day with her. So I saw her when she was at her, I guess, most sick, and I think maybe some of the thoughts came from that. But yeah, at a young age, I'd probably look back and think, those probably weren't normal thoughts. And then on both sides of my family, I've seen my cousins, aunties, uncles struggle with their own mental health, and then throughout school there was quite a few suicides and around school, and then people close to me who had others affected by it, and I found that really hard because it almost became something normal in my life, and something that I kind of felt exposed to at about 14 years old. And then there were a few other I guess experience that happened around those times that I found pretty tough. And then I was living this life, and I felt like everyone wanted something from me. I felt like I had to be a certain way for everyone. I was a perfectionist, so, you know, if I didn't do something the right way, I beat myself up about it. And then there were these past traumas that kept kind of coming back and affecting me, and cricket was my safe space, so I would go to sport to escape, to breathe, for my mind to finally be clear. And that's where everything felt good. It felt like I had mental clarity, because when I wasn't there, my head was spinning. And then broke my finger in 2021 and just spiraled downhill. But I'd say 2020 was when I first was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and I started seeing a psychologist weekly. Kind of got better. COVID made things pretty tough too. Yeah, and then 2021, I remember in 2020, I'd gone what I went through, and I'd said, I'm so glad I went through what I went through, because I learnt so much about myself, but I hope I never feel that way again. And then in 2021, it just felt like my world came crashing down.
Anything in particular when you've, like in 2021, where it got significantly worse for you?
I think the main thing was I probably fully hadn't dealt with the things that had happened that were causing me to feel the way I did in 2020, but also in 2021 I broke my finger, and that took away my safe space. It took away,
which is your sport.
Yeah, it took away the one place where I felt like I could breathe.
Yeah.
And so for the rest of it, I just felt suffocated, and I had nowhere where I could go. And it was my family that pulled me out of that place, but I wanted to hide it from them so much.
And looking through your video series, Treading Water, shout out to that video series, because if you haven't seen it, make sure you go check it out. We'll put some links in the description wherever you're listening. Throughout this, you've profiled different people, from sort of, young people to sporting sort of superstars. Duplessis is in that as well. And from when I was reviewing and watching those videos, a massive theme across everyone's kind of story around mental health is this longing to not be a burden to anyone, and that, their issues will be a burden to their friends and their family. I'm just wondering, is that something which you also experienced when you were going through this episode around mental health? Was it that you didn't want to let other people down?
Yes, I've always been massively empathetic, and I know how much my family love me because of how close we are, and the way I was feeling, I did not want them to know at all, because I thought, if they know how I'm feeling, they're going to be broken.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to think they could have done anything more, because it's nothing to do with them. And so telling them I just wanted to hide everything from them, and I couldn't bear them really knowing, which I just didn't want to hurt them. But in fact, what hurt them more was not knowing.
Totally.
And they eventually could see it, but that's the scary thing with depression is you can hide stuff. People put on a brave face and it's invisible. And often when you can see it, it can be too late, or it's at when people are at their crisis point or at their lowest. And that's kind of when my family found out, which, you know, maybe if I'd been able to speak about it earlier, I might not have got to the place that I was in, but I was just too afraid to speak about it and tell the people I'm closest to because I didn't want to be a burden.
It's crazy, eh? It's so crazy. And if you would to say to your family, you know, and it's the exact same thing, like for not telling them, that's what makes them the most upset and actually hurts as well. The only way, and like I've had my own sort of ups and downs with mental health, but the one thing I can do to relate to what you're saying is when I was 16, I got told I was going to become a father. And I hid it from my family until my daughter was about 3.5 months old. So I was like sneaking out of house to, go visit her after school, going to the hospital when she was born and going to school the next day and not telling my family. And it was the exact same thing. You know, I didn't want the potential stereotype of what a teen dad looks like to let my family down, didn't want to stress them out. My mum was also pregnant with my baby brother. And it's, looking back on it now, as I'm in a better space and I'm confident and proud to be a dad, it's crazy that was my thought pattern when I'm, the same as you. I've got a great relationship with my mum. I've got a great relationship with my dad and all my other family. I feel like I could literally tell them anything, but for that particular reason and in that circumstance, I felt like I just kept everything bottled up for so long, and it doesn't do anyone any good, eh?
No, I remember saying to my parents after it, sometimes it's hard to tell the people you love the most because you don't want to hurt them.
Yeah.
And that's where, for me, getting into a psychologist was so important, because I am telling a stranger, but it is crazy how your brain is wired and how when you're in that state of mind you think that's what you should do, and you're trying to protect everyone else when actually you're probably the person that needs help and needs to be protected at that time. And you flip the role. If your best mate, if your child's struggling, you want them to you want them to talk to you, and you'd say, you're not being a burden. But when you're in it and you're in your own head, it can be scary, and you hold on to things, and it builds up, and that's when it reaches the breaking point.
So how did you help to, obviously seeing a psychologist, but what were the steps that you took and maybe your family took to support you to help you get you through this tough time? I think I read somewhere you were at a White Ferns training camp and you actually got sent home. They were like really sort of looking after your mental well-being. Really keen just to hear how that whole sort of recovery journey and what that looked like for you.
Yeah, the recovery journey it felt long, but it was tough, and it's still going today. But I remember being in the worst place I'd ever been in. I wasn't sleeping. I'd kind of been surrounded by suicide so much, and then it started crossing my mind, and I couldn't really cope with that. I didn't know how to, and the only person I spoke to was Maddie Green, who's in the White Ferns, but also Leslie, who works for the Players Association, and I just promised Leslie, who lives in Christchurch, I'm going to get to Christchurch and then I'll be able to talk to you, and I'm just going to get there. And then I remember getting on the plane from Wellington to Christchurch and sitting by the window, and I just cried and cried on the plane because I was looking out the window and it was a beautiful night, and I just thought, this city is so beautiful and amazing. And something in my head just said, this is the last time I'm ever going to see this place.
Wow.
And so I got to Christchurch that night, and basically Maddie eventually stepped in, and they were worried about my safety. And from that night on, I was basically being watched, looked after. Maddie stayed with me that night, and then the next day, the psychologist at New Zealand Cricket stepped in. They sent me home. Maddie came back with me because I was thinking, okay, they want to send me home. I'm just going to run away. Like,
Was that
that
your,
was my
that was your
mindset. I
thought
was like,
pattern?
I don't want to go home because I was feeling all this pain in Wellington. I just wanted to run away from everything.
You thought Christchurch would be the
I
sort
just,
of
yeah,
how
it
you
was just
deal
like
with it, yeah.
getting away. And then obviously they put someone with me. And then I went home and Maddie said, someone's got to be with you tonight. Who do you want it to be? And my sister was still in Wellington. So I said, she can come round. So she came round, and then moments later I saw my mum and dad walking in down the driveway, and I could kind of tell they looked upset and had been crying. And then they came in, and I was annoyed because I was like, I don't want anyone to see me like this. And then I started walking to my room I was like, I need to breathe. This is so overwhelming. And then I saw my uncle and auntie walk in, and I just freaked out, had this massive panic attack, hyperventilating. My grandparents came, and then I probably was about having this panic attack for 20, 30 minutes.
What does it feel like to have a panic attack?
They come in different forms, but it kind of felt like my whole body was paralyzed in a way, and you can't control anything, the breathing, the crying, the shaking, and that you're just completely out of control of your body. And as much as you want to try stop it, you work it up even more. And I've learnt now techniques to stop them, or how much breathing helps. But yeah, you just feel out of control of your own body. And then I sat in this room with my family, and my dad, he read out a speech that my auntie and him had kind of put together, just about how much they love me and how they're going to be here for me, and that they're going to get the help and support I need. And a message of love and hope that things are going to get better. And it was a 2-minute speech that Dad took about 10 minutes to read, just from crying.
That'd be so hard, yeah.
The only time I'd ever seen my dad cry before was at the end of his mum's speech at her funeral. And I just saw everyone in that room cried, and everyone spoke. There was a few powerful things as well that night, and my grandparents, who I'm very close with, said to me, we don't know how many years we have left, but if you're not here, we know we have no good years left. And then my sister, who she's like my best friend, said that night, I remember when we were kids and we were growing up, and we were so annoyed at mum and dad for not having more kids, because we wanted what mum had with this big family, so your kids can have lots of cousins. And then Jess just said, you're all I have, and I want my kids to grow up with your kids. And it was so powerful. And I was in a horrible place, but everything that night that was said made me think I need to get better for my family because they need me. And then after that, Dad said, pack your bags, you're coming home. And I thought, just for the night. He's like, no, you're moving home. So that was that night was just obviously very emotional. Just
what an amazing family you have.
It was I don't think that every family could do that, but because of how close I am and what I saw, it was just like, for me, that became that's my only option, is getting better for my family because they need me here. And then the next day, Mum and Dad took me to the crisis team at the hospital, and I was there for 8 hours. I spoke to the nurse and 2 psychiatrists and someone in the mental health team about everything I was feeling and going through, and everyone in that room was in tears when I was speaking. And then, they sent me home with Mum and Dad. I got into a psychiatrist as well, so I could get on more medication. And then basically for the next 6 weeks, I wasn't allowed to be by myself. So I didn't drive myself anywhere. I had to sleep next to someone.
Really? Wow.
My sister's boyfriend took a week off work because my sister was going away, and I still wanted to go out and do normal things. I still wanted to go to the gym because that was my happy place. So I kind of just had this first week where I was just really numb. But like I still went to the gym, I still did stuff, but I was just so out of it. And then it got to the point where I hated that there was this control on my life. It's like everyone's watching me, I can't do anything for myself. And then I'd kind of get better and then feel sad again. I was like, I don't want to tell people I'm sad because I don't want control again.
Yeah.
So that was a real battle for a while, kind of dealing with that. And then we went into another lockdown.
Yeah.
And that was a blessing.
A blessing, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like the world became so peaceful and everything stopped around me. We were in lockdown and I actually didn't have a bed the whole lockdown because we took in my flatmates, another friend, so there was about 7 of us.
How good. Living the dream.
Yeah, and they're like some of the closest people to me, and I just felt safe. And I think that was a real healing process for me.
Yeah.
And I think after that I got myself slowly into a better place and understood myself and seeing a psychologist, a psychiatrist every week. And then I got better, and that's where the ideas from the videos came. And then now I want to do more. And why I want to do more is because, you know, you still live with it every day. You know, I've told my story and I feel in a way better place.
Yeah.
But I still get sad. There's still things that affect me. And it doesn't just go away. You know, we all feel the highs and lows of life.
Totally.
So it's something I think if we can normalise the conversation, but also for people to know, you know, it can come back, or, you know, it's something you got to work on each day.
It's not like a linear journey, eh? There's so much nuance to finding out how how that little brain in our head functions and operates, and what we can feed it to keep ourselves healthy and strong, and how to ride the waves. With the title Treading Water, it's a beautiful, beautiful title. What's the inspiration and the message around treading water?
Yeah, so I remember that day I was at the hospital at the crisis team, and I knew we were probably going to be there for a while. And I took like my laptop or a journal because I loved writing. I couldn't really speak my thoughts at first, but I could write them.
Yeah.
And because my family did what they did that night, I then wanted to write down and explain to them how I was feeling. So I wrote down everything that I had been feeling and what I was feeling and how I'm going to get better. And at the end of the, speech little thing, I said to them, I think Mum said to me once, "How are you feeling?" when I was going to bed. And I was just like, it's so hard to explain because I don't know if you'll understand. And then I kind of used it in a metaphor analogy, and I just said something along the lines of, I've been treading water for so long, trying to keep my head above surface level. I was drowning and I wanted to drown. And then you guys were the rescue boat, and I'm so glad you pulled me up when I needed you the most, and that now I'm back on land where I feel safe and I can breathe again. But that was, for me, how I felt. I was just constantly treading water, coming up for air and going back under, and it was this vicious cycle and this horrible battle I was in. And I read that out to Hamish, who filmed the Treading Water, and he said, let's call it Treading Water.
Great name.
So it's pretty powerful,
Yeah.
but also I think it's someone that if you've gone through mental health, everyone has mental health, but if you've gone through depression or anything like that, whether you've gone through it or not, you can visually see someone treading water, and how if you did that for too long, that it gets too hard.
Yeah, it's exhausting, eh? Yeah, that's amazing. Far out. What a story, and what a family you have. That's incredible. I'm sure those moments within, and I don't know if an intervention's the right word to call it, but when you had that family meeting, I'm sure those are moments and messages that you'll remember for the rest of your life. Yeah,
for sure. I think it's probably the most powerful thing that's ever happened in my life, and things from that night will stay with me forever. And I think on a whole, with what happened that night, and then what my family's also been through stuff, but also from that, how close our family has become.
True.
And I think through that pain, and I think through vulnerability, it shows strength, and I think it's just brought our family a whole lot closer together and more aware of things. I had my cousin Eli, who was on the first series of Treading Water.
Shout out Eli.
Yeah, he's the man. And he struggled from like about 8 years old with depression and anxiety, and it was almost like we didn't really talk about it as a whole family, with all the cousins, and it's because that's what the world was like back then. It wasn't something you talked about.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I don't know, I think in Dan Fowey's interview, he spoke about mental health and depression being like a cancer. And that, if you speak about it, you can catch it early. If you find the cancer early, you got a better chance of surviving, and it's the same thing. And I think the other thing is the response people give to someone with depression and anxiety. You don't know how to respond sometimes.
No.
But no one chooses to have it. It's cruel, and it's an illness. And I think it's realising that, when someone has cancer, you sympathise and you're there and you're around them. But sometimes we haven't been taught what to do.
Yeah.
And you're scared of saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to be. And the best thing is just being there.
Yeah.
You don't need to say anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just let them know you're there.
Yeah. It's a crazy space, eh? And I remember growing up, my mum had this photo of this friend of hers, and it was like a photo of like a young guy, must have been, I don't know, 18 or early 20s, and he was smiling. I remember it was on our fridge. I remember asking her, I was like, who is this person, Mum? And she was like, she'd tell this sort of story, and then she's always said like, I'll tell you a bit more about it when you get older. And I got a bit older, and I asked her again, and she told me that person had taken his own life. And I was like, shit, that's crazy. And the older I got, I realized my dad had also experienced friends who had, took their own life. Don't really like the term committing suicide, but and I always remembered those stories from my parents, and then I never thought that would happen to me in my friend group. And then in year 13, a really close friend of mine, he took his own life as well. And he was living up in Tawa at the time. And it's such a crazy sickness and a crazy disease that essentially plays tricks on your mind and your body. It's so crazy. And it's just, the point I'm trying to make is just how fucking sideways it is, how common it is for people our age, to have these feelings, or to know of people that have actually gone through with the whole thing. Like, it's such I don't know if we're alone in New Zealand with this sort of epidemic for young people with depression and stuff, but it just seems like it keeps on happening. It's so crazy. But I think the amazing work that you're doing with Treading Water, the more exposure, the more we can have conversations like this, which will be in people's, ears if they're commuting or whatever, the more we talk about it, the more we make sure that these thoughts, everybody can have them, but as long as we can help people understand what they can do to support others feeling in that way, I think we'll be a better place, eh?
Agree, and I think you just feel so alone throughout it all.
Yeah.
And so if we can talk about it and how others know they're not, that's why also I partnered with I Am Hope, because of what they stand for, the counselling through Gumboot Friday.
Super cool, man.
Because we do live in a broken system, and we're the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff.
Yeah.
We're reactive with everything. Like when we're injured, we go to the physio. When we're in a bad place, we go see a psychologist. We don't keep on top of things. It's when we're at our worst we get seen. So, the system makes it hard. And that's why I think what Mike King and everyone's doing at I Am Hope is amazing for people under 25 to have free counselling. And
should just be just so accepted and actually funded, that you can have access to this sort of counselling as a young person. Yeah, it is crazy. It should be open for absolutely everybody as well. Also, just think for the government, that would be such an easy win. Nobody would disagree with X party saying, hey, we're going to make free counselling for all people under 25. No one's going to be like, that's a ridiculous waste of money. Yeah, I know. It's such a Such a good idea. What has your relationship been with Mike King and I Am Hope?
Well, I got in touch with a psychologist through the Cricket Players Association about my idea and wanted to get in touch with Mike King, and they passed on the contact details, so I gave him a ring and told him my idea and told him why I wanted to do a range of different people, and he thought it was awesome.
Cool.
And so he was fully behind it, and he was just, let me know what you need. And I said, I kind of know what, I can see the vision, and I know a guy that has done video stuff for cricket before, and he's amazing. So got in touch with Hamish, and I basically said my idea to him, and he was like, yeah, I can see it.
Cool.
And I think that's also what makes the series so good is how visually. I mean,
aesthetic
you go through
it is, yeah.
It's a real storytelling process.
Yeah.
And like everyone has a story. So from that, Mike just kind of kept in touch throughout it all, and then I think it went pretty well, the series. I mean, you never know quite, but I've had some amazing messages from people or other complete strangers. There was one lady that I was out at a restaurant in Wellington, and this mum came up to me crying and wanted to give me a hug and just said, thank you so much for your series. It's helped me and my son who's struggling so much. And for me, that was just so powerful because I was like, that's why I did it.
Yeah.
You know, it was hard at times for me.
Yeah.
But it was like, that's why. That's my why.
Yeah.
And then Mike has recently been in touch again and said, let me know when you're ready for series 2.
Cool.
So I'm in the process of that. It will be smaller, but yeah, in the process of that, less people.
Episodes? Okay, yeah.
But it's exciting, and we're hoping to get some, pretty inspiring people on it also. So it's definitely something I would love to work in this space and do more in this space because I think, one, it's so important. Everyone has mental health, and the more we can talk about it, the more we're going to help others.
That's so nice. What I do like about the episodes is there's a really good mix of, the superstars, Hurricanes players, basketball players, but also just the ordinary New Zealander, the ordinary Kiwi, who doesn't really have that platform and stuff as well. I don't know if it's like an ask, but it'd be really cool if you did, keep including that, because when I was watching it, I was like, man, it also normalizes it that it's not always people in the limelight that have these feelings. It's, every ordinary person, whether you're a student, studying or doing whatever, working a 9 to 5 in retail, it's super normalized there.
Yeah, that's where the idea came from for me, and it's probably because I had seen friends and family members struggle, and I thought, okay, I've seen more people speak about mental health in the media, but it's, high profile people.
Exactly.
And so I was like, I want so many different people from all walks of life.
Grassroots,
I want everything, because if there's more stories for others to relate to, then I'm going to help more people.
Totally.
And the more people I can help, the better. So that's why I wanted to do a range of those different people we had, the 7 and including me, where everyone's story, there was similarities, but everyone's story was so different and unique to them, and it just shows that every person's experience is different. And I think that's why the first series was extremely powerful.
100%. What would you say to people listening that might have a friend that's, suffering with depression, anxiety? What would you say to them? Not saying that, you got the silver bullet solution or anything, but from what you've learned through your experience, how would you, what would your advice be to them to help support their loved ones going through tough times?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a trained psychologist or anything, but I've had lived experience and have had things that had helped me. I think, one, if you know a person's struggling, you've got to be patient with them. And, you might want the information out of them straight away, but you've got to wait till they're ready. But it's just trying to be as clued in as you can as well, but you've got to be patient and just let them know that you're there for them no matter what. Let them know how much you love them, because it's scary when you're in that lonely, dark place, how you forget how you forget that. I think the most important thing is just being there for them, encourage them to seek help. I think, there's just having someone that is there for you no matter what. And that's what I had. And before it was my family, it was Maddie. I knew I could call her at any time, day or night. And yeah, it's just someone being there for you. If they're ready to talk, listen. And if they're not, just be there in silence.
Yeah. With your schedule at the moment and your travel, you're just saying you're off to Bangladesh soon, then you're off to the UK. How do you stay on top of the practical side of things when it comes to looking after your own well-being? Because I'm sure with your schedule, your profile, it must just be like, okay, cool, Amelia, we got this thing over here, okay, next Wednesday you've got training. It would just be so hectic for you 24/7. How do you personally, what steps do you take to make sure that you are keeping up with looking after yourself?
Yeah, it's been a pretty full-on few months recently, and sometimes I forget to almost look after myself in a way and do the things that I know fill my cup. I'm lucky that I love training and that going to the gym and running is part of my training.
Yeah.
But I'd do that anyway for my mental health.
Yeah.
So that always helps me feel better. I think for me also, like, things I got into after my mental health was photography. Not that I got into it and wanted to be a photographer, but I enjoyed going out, listening to music and taking photos in nature. I love being outside. I love swimming in the ocean. It's a bit cold at the moment, but
Freezing.
for me, being in nature was really important. I loved reading. I love reading. Journaling, and I think gratitude. If you tell someone to do gratitude, they're kind of like, oh, it won't really help. But actually, I did it every day for a long time, and it helped a lot. And it's probably something I should keep doing. I don't do it all the time now, but I should.
Good reminder.
Yeah, it is a good reminder. And then just connecting with family and friends. And for me, those are kind of things that I do to look after myself. I have started seeing a psychologist again. I had a really good relationship with mine, but she moved to the UK, and then I found myself struggling a little bit again recently, and kind of avoided it and went back to that old habit of
keep your head down, keep busy.
Yeah, keep busy. Don't tell anyone. You'll be fine. And then I was like, okay, I actually do need help. So I think through that, I've just identified my cues a little bit earlier when I'm going into a bad place. And I think recently it was actually a good reminder for me to keep on top of things even when I'm in a good place, because I'm still going to have ups and downs.
Yeah.
It's part of my makeup and what's happened. But yeah, I think being out in nature has been a real key for me, and just being grateful for each moment that I'm in.
That's really nice. Yeah, it's such a roller coaster, eh? And awesome now that you've gone through that, those really tough times, and you understand probably yourself a bit more, and you know what those triggers are and how to deal with them. So that's super cool. You're recently over in India as well for the first Women's Premier League competition over there. You came back as the winner. You guys were the champion, which is pretty awesome. But just really keen to hear from you. What is it like to play cricket over in India in front of 50,000 screaming fans? What is that like from playing, in New Zealand with probably smaller crowds, less exposure, to going overseas, and it's just basically like a religion over there, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd been to India once before for cricket, which were some exhibition matches for the hope of a WPL happening.
Yeah.
I was there for 10 days and I loved it. And then, went back this year, and I think it was one of the best months of my life. It was incredible.
Crazy.
And it's probably every cricketer's dream. And yeah, they're just fanatic over there. We're staying at the hotel and walk out for training or for a game, and all the hotel staff and they're out there waving their flags, and
wow.
You're playing in bigger crowds, which is awesome, because that's what you saw growing up in the men's game.
Yeah.
I watched the IPL growing up, and and saw that, and then yeah, you're fielding on the boundary and you walk back and people are screaming your name.
What's
and
that? What's that like? What's that feeling like?
I mean, you kind of, it's like you're in the moment when you're playing, but it's the moments between balls where you kind of notice that. And it's just like what you see is what you get in India. It's just crazy how much they love it. You know, you give them a wave and there's a huge cheer.
That's awesome.
And it's like, that doesn't happen in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're too busy just drinking beers and like the basin or
and
something.
chilling, and we're just so laid back here.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Like, it's nice coming home and you're just in this like calm, peaceful place. But yeah, it's an amazing experience. The cricket was amazing, and to win it, you know, you get looked after very well, and it's amazing just for women's cricket. It's also life changing too,
Totally.
and it's going to inspire so many
Yeah.
young kids, I think, to play cricket and to see that as a career path as well, like what we were talking about earlier. So, yeah, but to play in front of that many people is also living out a childhood dream, and
100%.
then to win the whole thing is pretty special, and it's the first one too, and I guess no one can ever take that away.
100%. So what was the biggest crowd that you played in front of? Was it like 50,000 odd?
Well, the final was sold out, which was at a stadium which held 50,000, but the opening match and another game we had, which was I think a top of the table clash, we played at a bigger stadium which seated about 80,000.
No way.
And I think there was about 70,000 there. So
Jeez, that's crazy. That's like an All Blacks game, you know?
yeah, it's ridiculous. It's just, they just love cricket. It's amazing a country like that, how much they love cricket.
Yeah.
I turned up to training and I could just turn up to a net on the grass and you'd have people just wanting to bowl at you all day, you know? Like if I went to Ngāti Tawa Domain there and padded up, there wouldn't be anyone lining up to bowl.
Yeah,
but you go to India, I could bat all day and people just come and bowl. It is a religion over there for them.
That's amazing. What was like your standard week, let's say Monday to Friday, while you were training and competing over in India?
Yeah, well, when I first got there was so much media. And I was like, we've done more media than cricket. And I was like, I just want to go play or train.
Yeah.
I actually got COVID when I first got there. So I had a day isolating. And then I actually played the first game, I think, with COVID.
True.
And we ended up probably playing 3 games a week. So it got quite busy.
It's an intense schedule, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd kind of play a game, and they were all night games. So we'd get back at about 2 a.m.
Far out.
And then you'd sleep till about 10:30, 11, wake up, have breakfast. We found a good local cafe, actually, that did proper coffee.
I was about to say, is
in
the coffee
India.
all good over there?
Well, we found a good spot that had good coffee, but they only did full fat, and I'm dairy free.
Oh, no.
So I just took one for the guts. And
So you didn't do like long black or anything?
nah, I just went for it.
Took
which
one
was,
for the guts.
yeah, bad mistake. But a few of us ended up signing the wall at this cafe, and we
Far
gave them
out.
a few shirts. So we'd do that, and then we'd review the game as a team and whatnot. We had 2 masseuses with us the whole time, so probably had the most massages I've ever had. So
How
my
good.
body wasn't ever sore.
Yeah.
So the day after the game was always very chill. And then the next day, we'd either be playing or would have a training session.
Yeah.
There wasn't much around us. We're staying about an hour out of Mumbai. So, but we had like a team room set up with a tennis table,
Sweet.
pool table. They put on dinners for us at the thing. My dad came over as well.
Epic.
So you kind of kept busy because you were playing so much, and they were late nights and whatnot. But yeah, otherwise it was just normal training, gym, because you just want to keep up with your gym and running, and then recovering and a lot of meetings.
Yeah, true that. Man, that's wild, eh? How many times would you train a week when you got games and stuff going on?
Yeah, well, a few were optional trainings, and if we were playing 3 games a week, there might have only been 2 trainings.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think in a tournament like that, especially because at the end of a big summer for a lot of people, it was more about just mentally preparing for the games and keeping your body fresh. Whereas, at the moment, there's no games till I head overseas soon, and you're training every day because it doesn't matter if your body's a little bit sore. We've got we've got no games at the moment. So it kind of changes your schedule depending on a tournament, if you're at home or how many games you have a week. But it was an awesome learning experience, and to
cool.
play with other people around the world, work with different coaches. It's just it's not only the cricket, it's the friendships, it's the meeting new people and how other people go about their business. I think you can learn so much from those experiences.
Totally. Before the podcast as well, me and Ashton were having a talk, and there's a whole bunch of White Ferns players that have came from Tawa. How many are currently in the squad?
There is, what is there? There's 4 contracted.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 contracted White Ferns, and we've had in the last year 5 from Tawa College represent New Zealand.
That's wild. What is causing this phenomenon? Like,
Send your kids to Tawa College. We shout out. It's I don't know, but Sophie Devine obviously went to Tawa College, and so she's a bit older than the rest of us. She won't like me saying, but and then there's myself and my sister Jess and Georgia Plummer and Rebecca Burns, who have all made the White Ferns. But I think I remember when we were at school, we played in like the cricket for intermediate and then college. My dad helped out with some of the teams, and there was a group that just enjoyed playing cricket together. We were obviously successful, which also helps, when you're winning games. But there was just this group and a good training opportunity. We often made nationals. And then I remember one year at under-21s for Wellington, there was about 9 girls from Tawa in the Wellington team.
crazy.
So I don't know what it was. We maybe had a good system, and I guess when you had people doing well in cricket, more people wanted to be a part of that and be a part of that team. And
True. Get a bit of FOMO.
yeah, and then from there, I guess people kept going, and it's pretty cool to see that's happened, especially for a place like Tawa. You normally hear about people from schools in town or the private schools
Totally.
that have athletes or people, but when it's out of a co-ed school in Tawa, it's pretty cool to see people doing that, because often people think you've got to go to single sex or private schools to get those opportunities.
100%. Yeah, it's pretty mind-boggling. Like, what a crazy, cool niche that is, that Tawa College has produced so many great cricket athletes. Hurts me to say it as a former Aotea College pupil, but send your daughters over to Tawa College if you want them to be a cricket superstar.
Yeah, something in the water.
Yeah, there must be, That's super cool, man. What's your next sort of schedule looking like until now to the end of the year? What have you got going on for you?
Yeah, it's surprisingly, it's kind of just creeps up on you, and the year goes quickly now.
It's crazy,
We're always
I know,
already
in
halfway
June.
through.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
But yeah, I head to Sri Lanka next week. That's for about 3 weeks.
Yep.
We play there. We have 6 games, and then I'll come home for a little bit, go to the UK, and I play for the London Spirit in the 100 ball. That's for all of August, and then come home again for maybe a week or so, and then the White Ferns head to South Africa. It's not 100% confirmed, but it's very likely to happen. So that will be cool, because we're in South Africa this year, actually.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Is it like one of your favourite places to travel to?
Cape Town, epic.
Cool,
man. Beautiful, beautiful. And then after South Africa is the Women's Big Bash in Australia, where in previous years I've played for the Brisbane Heat. So there's a draft coming up for that, and I'll be working out if that works out in the schedule. And then from after that, we'll be in our home summer. So Pakistan will play us at home, and then I'll play for Wellington. And then I think the WPL is happening in February.
Cool.
And then come home, and England are playing us at home.
Far
So
out.
I feel like the next 6 months are going to go pretty quick with how busy and how much cricket there is.
That is actually insane. I wish I had my, schedule with work that laid out. And that just sounds so exciting, eh?
It is
Super
exciting.
cool.
And you get to go to good places.
Yeah,
and
man.
yeah, we've got a good culture in our teams too. And having Jess there, my sister, it's pretty fun.
Are there times you have to really pinch yourself? You're like, this is the life that I'm living. I get to do this for a job.
Yeah, I think it's like It definitely is. I think some people, like, you're out training all day, and I don't know, sometimes I think people think you don't have a job. And it's like, I'm actually busy today. I'm
Yeah.
at my job.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like a job, or it's a job I love.
Yeah.
And I think that's also the thing I want to do for the rest of my life, you know?
Yeah.
When it's not cricket, I want to do a job that I love. And so, yeah, I feel very fortunate, especially when I more pinch myself when I think back to that 9-year-old girl watching the White Ferns saying she wanted to be one.
Super cool. Definitely made her proud, eh?
Yeah, so I think when I look back to that, you know, I look back to me in the nets with Dad before school, pretending to bat with Susie Bates, and now I actually am batting with her. I'm like, that's cool when I look back on those moments.
Yeah, that is unreal. You probably get this question a lot as well, but what do you think you'd be doing if you weren't playing cricket?
It's a great question. I think I would love to do things like what I'm doing with I'm Hope and in the mental health space. I used to always say I'd be a teacher because all my family are teachers, but definitely not now.
Why is that? Why not now?
I did teacher aiding for a bit.
Yeah.
And my sister was a teacher when I was teacher aiding. And man, it's a tough job.
It's hard yakka, eh?
Yeah.
Especially
big days.
massive days, kind of average pay conditions as well.
Yeah.
And you got to deal with annoying kids who aren't your own kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think whatever I would want to do is to do with helping people.
Yeah, nice.
And trying to set up opportunities for kids to have a better life or to be able to do what they want to do, and something in the mental health space. So, but my dream job would be to be a musician. It's just unfortunate that I don't have musical talent.
Oh, true. How good. Like, what do you play any instruments?
I learnt the guitar, like basic.
Yeah.
I take that on tour with me.
Yeah.
And that's also another good thing, I think, for my mental health, 'cause it's just like peace of mind and you're focusing just on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, my aunties and uncles are like good singers and can play whatever. They read music or they can just hear something and play it. I always get so jealous of them.
Yeah. I know, right? Especially, I've got heaps of friends. One friend in particular who's just like an amazing singer. I'm like, man. And he works obviously incredibly hard. It's not like you're just born with like an amazing voice. But yeah, I'd love to be like a really good singer, eh?
Yeah, that'd be one of my selfish wishes.
100%. Hey, we'll just finish up with some sort of quick fire-ish questions. They're nothing too tricky, but they are quite deep. So, what brings you true happiness?
I think nature and my family.
Nice. Advice you wish you knew about when you were younger?
I think it's okay to show that you're sad.
What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy means to me, I guess, leaving the place that you're in a better place than what you found it. Leaving a better impact on the people you've touched when you leave.
Love it. If you could change one thing in New Zealand, what would this be?
It's a good question. I think from the topics we spoke about today, it would definitely be to do with the mental health system here.
What do you believe is the main thing that is holding back young people in New Zealand?
I think, one, we're scared to fail, and the criticism you get for being yourself sometimes.
Love it. We'll end on a quote, but before that, where can people get in touch with you and your mahi?
You can, follow me on Instagram, which is Amelia Kerr, and then from there you can go to my website, which is outoftherrough.nz, and that will have all the full treading water videos on there.
Cool.
And then the short ones are on my Instagram page.
Epic. Man, we'll put links in the description as well, and we'll end with a quote. This one is from Conor McGregor, and it says, "There's no talent here. This is hard work. This is an obsession. Talent does not exist. We're all equals as human beings. You could be anyone if you put in the time. You will reach the top, and that's that. I am not talented. I am obsessed." Cheers, Amelia. Thank you.
Thank you.